I just like to bring on cool people that I watch on YouTube and just have a conversation with them. I was tuning into your live that you did yesterday, and I've watched a couple of your videos now. And it's pretty interesting, man. We have a very similar story of trials and tribulations and pain and just kind of doing a bunch of crazy stuff to find yourself in this weird and wacky realm.
Mhm.
You mentioned Fresh Time grocery store. I have very fond memories of going to Fresh Time all the time.
Oh
Just
yeah.
it's just kind of funny, man. So you want to do an introduction to yourself of who you are, what you're doing, where you've been, and stuff like that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I guess that seems like a loaded question, but I'll do my best here. So, yeah, obviously my name is Nathan Barna. I right now I'm living in South Bend, Indiana. I was born and raised here, and kind of like you mentioned, I shared on my Instagram live yesterday, or whatever when this is being listened to. Um, but like my journey, if I had to kind of pinpoint where things really, like my hero's journey really was initiated, was about like my senior year of high school. So at that time, I was in high school, I was straight A student, I was playing football, like wrestling, doing track, like, everything that you would expect like a good kid to be doing, like upholding all the expectations and the standards. And then my senior year, my mom ended up getting a new job, which required us to relocate. And then ultimately, everything I had identified myself with, being a student, being an athlete, and, my friend group, and all those types of things that you identify yourself with, especially in high school, all those things were stripped away. And it was really like the first time in my life where like I just felt lost. Like I had no sense of direction of who I was, what I was doing. And that was really one of the big first initiation for me that ultimately got me to start looking into these different, like, asking bigger questions, like, who am I? Like, what am I here to actually do? And really at that time, all I knew is that I loved to lift weights. That was like, if there was anything that I was certain of, it was like, I just love being in the gym. That was kind of the one area of my life. And kind of like, as I've come full circle in this journey, well, still processing a lot of things. I mean, I'm only 27. So, still a lot of life experience to be had. But as I'm kind of unpacking a lot of these things, I'm kind of realizing that more and more that I gravitated towards the lifting because it was that sense of certainty where I knew exactly what I was doing. I had a program. It's like, I'm going to hit this weight, I'm going to do this many reps. And like I was in control in that element. And I think that was one of the big reasons why I gravitated towards that, because there was so much uncertainty in the rest of my life. And so yeah, during that time, I started just looking for answers. I came across Elliot Hulse on YouTube, which I feel like most dudes my age are kind of like have fond memories
Yeah.
of that. Like, because that was back in kind of like the 2014, when he was really popping off on YouTube. So I came across him and like, looking kind of like most guys, where you're searching for the training side of things, and he's like teaching you how to build muscle and like do different training modalities and strongman and all that. Then he starts talking about all this other stuff like philosophy and spirituality, and then he started talking about Paul Chek, and I like looked into Paul Chek. At that time, it was just like kind of way over my head. I was like, all right, this dude's kind of crazy. Like, I don't know really what he's talking about. But it kind of like planted a seed, and I started to, like, he mentioned Osho, he mentioned Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I started like studying those. I got Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays. Like I remember Intuition by Osho was the first book of his that I got, and really it just started. I started to get this sense of like I can actually do exactly what I want to do in my life, and I can trust in my own intuition. I can trust in my heart to kind of guide me to where I need to be. And ultimately, it's not so much of actually getting to that place as it is who I become in the process. So that was kind of like, I tell that story because that was kind of the initiation of my hero's journey, which then is now kind of taking me to really where I'm at now of just, continuing that thread of me, following my heart, doing the things that I love to do, which led me to, building different businesses like I own. It's called Optimal Evolution, which is it's a coaching service dedicated to helping strength athletes specifically get strong as shit, but doing it in a way where you're maximizing your health and your happiness. So that was my journey. I was like doing the typical kind of no pain, no gain, just do whatever you got to do to perform at all costs. And I broke myself down. And then that's when I started to realize, actually, if I focus on my health and I focus on just being the best that I can be at all different levels, that is what's going to help me perform at the highest level and actually do it in a way that was, the most fulfilling too. So Optimal Evolution is kind of an outlet to help teach other people that. And then Magic is another business that is my kind of like higher end, where it kind of naturally trickled through as an extension of Optimal Evolution, because people wanted to go deeper, and I kind of started to noticing that I was like teaching people like these deeper concepts in spirituality and in like mental emotional management and like the process of manifestation, like all of these things that I was learning just kind of out of really my own necessity to make this dream of mine a reality. And then just the natural extension of kind of like the weight of knowledge, you get to a point where it's like, people got to know about this stuff. I got to share these things. And so, I mean, yeah, and that's kind of, now I'm like an entrepreneur and, athlete. I kind of like, if I had to label myself, I'm an athlete, entrepreneur, artist, and coach. It's like, I also like, I make music. I'm like a rapper, although I kind of am expanding the realm of what I do with music. But yeah, that's, I said that it kind of encompasses the gist. If I had to give myself a little bio here.
You're a reality designer, man. You're chipping away trying to design your reality in all realms. That's what we're all doing. Elliot Holst, man, I do have fond memories of Elliot. All his videos that he'd do there in the garage, there at Strength Camp. Man, he's the OG creator who basically invented the fitness, spirituality, all-in-one kind of guru. So I wonder what he's up to now. I haven't really paid too much attention to him. It seems like we cycle through different creators every year or so, but he definitely did have a tremendous impact on me too. Oh man.
Yeah. I've kind of been noticing he's been coming back around, because I like on social media, it's crazy. I've been the most engaged on social media that I've ever been, as far as like posting and putting content out, while simultaneously being the least engaged of like actually consuming content. But I've been studying Russell Brunson. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's like an internet marketer person, like, entrepreneur. But he has a lot of teachings, and he teaches the concept called the Dream 100, where essentially, just really the marketing 101 of like, okay, who's your ideal client and what are they looking for? And then where are they at? And then part of that process is like, well, if you can figure out the people that you're looking for are already going to, like, who are the people that your ideal clients are already following, and you can kind of, develop relationships with those people. It can, even just one of those people can open the door wide open from a business standpoint. That's my puppy in the background, if you can hear that.
Makes it more real,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, but Elliot also is one of those guys that I follow, because a lot of my ideal clients follow him. But yeah, he's been. I noticed he was like really into. I think he still is. He got into Christianity, and it's interesting because I don't know if it's just me following him for so long. I don't know if it's just me from following him for so long, but I feel like he purposefully will get into controversial areas just for the sake of, being able to reach more people and to kind of get more people into his world, to kind of spread the deeper message. So I know he's like really like full on like Jesus, like Christianity, but I kind of have this feeling that he was doing it for this deeper reason. But now he's kind of like, I think, trying to bring back his like the Elliot era mentality and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting to watch these different people. And like you said, I think we kind of go through different phases where we might be at different points in our lives where we might need different teachings or different messages. And then we kind of like find, we expose ourselves to these different people. And sometimes they, like the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's like you'll find this person that you never heard of before, and it's like, oh, these are the answers that I've been looking for. And I mean, honestly, like Elliot Hulse kind of was that person back in that phase of my life. Like, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Where's this dude been at?
Yeah, we all need a mentor, at least for a large portion of life. I mean, when I was younger, I definitely need a mentor because it seemed like everyone around me was kind of just lying to me about life or reality. It was like the Jesus thing, believe in Jesus, he's going to save
Mhm,
you. Just don't develop yourself because it doesn't matter this life. Just, whatever, it's going to be fine. Wait till you die to live your life. And to me, that never really made any sense. I mean, we have to like really think about the things that were like are so deeply embedded into our framework of our being and take a fully holistic approach, whether it's the food you eat, how you're exercising, how you're living your day. I mean, it's all connected. And before, in this fractionated worldview, it very much was like there's the medical system, then there's like those weird, crazy acupuncture people, and then there's the meditation people, and then there's the new age, and there's all these different things, and they're all now coming together. And so
mhm.
we're almost like in this phase in reality where we're trying to decide what is real, what like sticks within this whole holistic container, and what's bullshit, and we shouldn't do it all. And so I think that's what we're trying to do right now as the new creators is pave our path. I mean, you're the new Elliot Hulse for someone right now, some 15-year-old kid that doesn't even you don't even know exists, but he's watching every video. I mean, we're all
Mhm.
going to be that for someone, you know.
Yeah, I'm curious for you, and I mean, this might just open up a can of worms that we could get into, but I'm curious, like, because I was just kind of looking at your page a little bit just before we dropped on here, and like the reality designer, like your kind of your whole idea structure that has kind of led you to your current like viewpoint of how all these things fit together. I know you mentioned like, like obviously just looking at things holistically, but I'm curious for you, and I guess you can kind of call it like a your own imago Dei, if you've heard of that term, or like your own God view of where you think this is all stemming from. Those things always fascinate me.
Like, what is the true metaphysical construction of reality and our involvement within it? Yeah, the thing is like I get called a lot of times, like because I don't believe in the God that people believe in, or I'm not about Jesus, or I'm not gonna hop on the Allah train or whatever. People they always want to assume that the counterposition to that is being an atheist. That oh man, you don't believe God exists. Everything started with a Big Bang, whatever science. But I think where I exist within is somewhere that's kind of in between, where it's trying to enrich and deepify all these ideas, but bring them to their baseline functionality and take all the fear out, take all the dogmatic out, and just get straight to how it's operating. Because at that level, that's just what it is. And so
Mhm.
there's all these human attachments to what God should be and how I should worship him, what name I should call him, if he loves me or doesn't love me, if I do this or that kind of thing. And I think it's all just constructions of our older paradigm. It's stuff that we thought was like so, it's like the representations of our phase of learning. But now that we're getting more and more advanced technologically and as a civilization, they're like kind of weird to step back into. It's like it's kind of weird for people to go back to Christianity right now. It's kind of weird, right? You just sort of feel it. Like, oh, it's like
Mhm.
an old paradigm. It's like a right versus wrong. Devil, he's gonna come and take me to hell. It's just these things that don't make any sense. And there's so many
Mhm.
things about life and reality that are basically like that. That are these mini programs that when you plug them into your worldview now, they don't even add up. And so I guess my whole brand is basically trying to find what are those things, how can we remove them, make sense of them, understand them, and find ones that are new that we should be adopting in this reality.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, and I guess from what I'm hearing, the way that I frame that is like, all ideas exist as potential,
Yeah.
because like potential is infinite, because we really, like, if you can think of, for me, it's like if you can think about something, then it exists as a potential in that mental realm. And basically kind of, and part of a lot of my work is being able to take different ideas. It's kind of like you said, of like, plugging in different programs, being able to take different ideas and try them on and like see how does that fit. Like you said, plugging in that program, how, and when you wear that, when you embody that, how does that manifest in what you're experiencing? And it's like if you kind of can develop, because for me, I've noticed a lot of it comes down to just overall having the awareness to be able to see these things, and like being able to take what is your normal subjective state. So obviously if you're running a program, but you don't see it as I'm running this program, this is just my reality, this is just who I am, this is just how I identify myself, then if it's not something you can see objectively, you're not going to be able to see it. And so growing that awareness to be able to see, oh, these are these stories that are running my life. These are these ideas that I'm basing all of my decisions on, that I'm taking all of these actions from, that is then mirroring itself back to me in the things that I'm experiencing. And it's like, okay, well, if I can try on some different ideas, or I can maybe install these different programs, and then, make decisions based off of that frame of thinking, that viewpoint of looking at things, and then see, okay, how does that reflect itself back to me? So yeah, I'm very aligned with that, because that's really been a lot of my own personal development work, is that process of exposing myself to all of these different ideas. And it's part of the reason why I study so much, because you get to a point where you're not necessarily like learning new things, but you're exposing yourself to other people's experiences and other people's way of looking at things and other ideas. Like, let me see how that fits. Let me see if I try that on, what kind of reality will mirror itself back to me, looking at the world through that lens. And that's really, kind of the process of manifestation. You take this idea and you take kind of like, which is the air element, and then you take all of the potential ideas and you set an intention. You basically collapse a particular idea, and that's the potential. You collapse the potential, and that's the intention. That's the fire element. And then it's like you have kind of your drive, your purpose behind it. It's like, okay, why do I actually want this thing? What is my reason for actually wanting to make this thing a reality? And that's like the water element. And this is like stuff from the Kabbalah. And then it's like, then you actually, the inspired action. I think that's like where a lot of people in the whole, especially in the whole like spiritual realm and teachings, where it's like, if I just think about it and I just like connect to the energy of it, then I can just like kind of sit here and everything's going to come to me. Where it's like, there's that whole element of the earth realm, like the actual physical reality that we live in, and actually taking action. But I think the big difference is it's inspired action. If you have a desire to create something, and then like it's a really like burning desire, like I want to make this thing happen, naturally there's going to be a drive to take some kind of action. And that's, for me, it's like the process of surrender isn't so much like where most people think of just, oh, I'm just going to surrender and just allow and like lay back and allow everything to happen. It's sometimes surrender looks like you doing the hardest shit you've ever done in your life, because like that's what you feel called to do. Like, oh, this is the action that I feel inspired to take, even though this seems very uncomfortable, even though this seems very scary, even though this seems like it's going to, lead me to this place like I've never been before. But this is what I feel called to do. And that's ultimately, like, for me, has been my experience and kind of where I'm at now, of just like being inspired, to take on these different, really like in this process of like building multiple businesses at once, and like just full on, like, let me see how far I can take this whole entrepreneur thing. And it's not so much, it used to come out of this place of scarcity, where it was just like, oh man, I don't have, like, I need money. I don't have these things. I need to do all of these things. And then I started to realize, well, like, I wonder how far I can actually take this. And just like with me being an athlete, if you have a training idea, you don't just like write it out on paper and like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, cool. You actually, oh no, let me try this. Let me see what happens. Let me like actually push into this idea and see the results that I get. And for me, training has become kind of a grounding force to my spiritual life, because I get that direct feedback every single day on whether or not I'm bullshitting myself. Because if I show up and I'm like, I'm tired and like I can't, the 315 pounds isn't moving the way that it normally moves and things are feeling heavy, then it's like, okay, there's something going on here with the way that I'm approaching things, with the decisions that I'm making, with the ideas that I'm allowing to basically run my life. And then I can kind of go back to the drawing board. Okay, let's try a different idea. And that process continues on and on. And, like you said, designing your reality.
You're kind of describing the process of making your life a project and an endless experimentation game. I mean, that's sort of what you're doing. And that's what the whole self development world is. It's all stuff that's completely invisible, all like your most important attributes of yourself that you're developing. Where does learning take place within your consciousness? It's all just behind the screen of our reality. It's stuff that can only get tested when we go out into the, what you say, the earth element, and actually do something about it. That's where you're really displaying all those structures that you're building behind yourself. So I guess our whole thing here is how can we componentize those things? And like you said, that kind of really got me stoked when I was watching your live, was you were talking about how can you take each of these attributes and just work on them as isolated things, and then are you have a display of all your different attributes that you're working on that may not even be related completely to physical fitness. It could be like mental health metrics, it could be spiritual. Like how can we, in a sense, metricize and compartmentalize all aspects of like you going into the spiritual realm as well, like beyond feeling,
Mhm.
beyond, how can we create a system for that? Because I think that's where the future of this is going, is like
Mhm.
getting to the foundations and kind of gamifying all of you and sharing that data with other people. And hey, building myself, designing my reality. Here's what I'm creating cool again. And not, this kind of weird kind of culture we're in now where it's almost like romanticizing depression. But how can we, make reality cool, living and experimenting with reality cool again? That's the future of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool you bring that up because that's like part of my like the life magic that I mentioned. It's part of the training is creating the structure that allows the flow. And I was, I struggled for a long time because I had the intention of, I want to be able like basically be able to build all these character traits all at once. And I kind of gave myself, because at first I was like, well, you can't do that. You just got to focus on one thing at a time. That's what people tell you. It's like, no, focus on one thing, do that thing, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing. But then as I kind of allowed myself to move into the potential of like, there is a potential, at the very least, there is a potential that I can get better at all of these things all at the same time, and that they can all synergistically feed off of one another, and that one thing helps the other thing. Because I mean, it is like it's holistic. Like everything, it's we're symbiotic beings. Everything is affecting and interacting with, interfacing with everything else. And I started to just try to like let me just do everything all at once. And then I realized pretty quickly, like, oh shit, I'm like, I don't have any time to do anything. And then I'm kind of like basically half-assing everything that I'm doing. I was like, okay, this is what people are talking about. But then every time, like I was working with different business coaches and like different like life coaches, and they'd say the same thing, like, okay, what's working right now? Why don't you just double down on that and like put all these other things on the back burner? I was like, okay, and then I would try that, and then there's always this. I always felt unfulfilled. Like I would just like there was a part of me that I wasn't nurturing, and so I would always kind of come back to the same cycle. It's like I only feel truly fulfilled when I'm doing all these things at the same time. And like that's just just again just me living life like it on the outside looking in, it looks like a lot of different things, like being an athlete, being a coach, like being an entrepreneur, building these different businesses. I mean, hell, even being an athlete, I compete in 3 different sports. So it looks like all these different things, but like for me, it's just my own expression of just who I am. And like these are just the things that I enjoy doing. These are things that just make me feel fulfilled and being aligned with my purpose and what I feel like I'm here to do. But I was going through that and I was like, okay, well, there's got to be a way. And one thing I learned is, ask who, not how. So it's like, who is, similarly trying to do all these things all at the same time? And the first person I thought of was like Tony Robbins, like, somebody that's very successful, and that kind of, a lot of his whole teaching is, we need to get better at all these things all at once. And so I started studying him, and he has his RPM system, is what he calls it. It's like a results focused, purpose driven, massive action plan. And so I started studying that, and he has like an audio course, and I went through it like 3 times to like finally get it. And I don't know if he realizes it or not, but he was basically like structure, systematizing the process of manifestation. Because the big thing is like, don't focus on all the things you think you got to do. It's, you get super clear on what is the specific results that I want, and what is the reason why I want that. Again, going back to the process of manifestation, like the intention, and then the emotional drive behind that. And then once you figure out those things, then all those other things become clear. It's like, oh, I just do this, 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 and this, and that's going to help me achieve that result. But the purpose, or the goal isn't to just do a bunch of things. It's to actually achieve the results that you're after. And so in a sense, it's really comes down to, how do I ask the right questions to get the right answers? And like, the better the questions that I can ask, the better the answers that I'm going to get, because the answers are implicit within the questions. When, again, knowing like it's all a potential, I can ask whatever question I want to ask that's going to imply the answer that I'm looking for. Like, what's the specific result that I want? And then basically kind of reverse engineering, like, this is what I want for my life as a whole. This is what I want for my life in all these different categories, like financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, business, sales, operation, like literally everything. And then you like reverse engineer that process of, okay, what's my ultimate result or vision that I want for each one of those categories of my life? And then that ultimately steps down into, okay, what am I doing this week? Or what results am I focusing on this week that are related to those specific things? And so that was really a big breakthrough for me, as you're talking about kind of like gamifying the process, and like actually having a system behind it. But it's kind of paradoxical, because again, just like in the sense of like, how do you measure love? How do you measure fulfillment? Like, yeah, you might be able to measure like the biochemical byproducts of a felt experience, but actually measuring like, this is love, and I feel more of that. It's like, it's a subjective experience that's, based on a lot of different factors, which, we really get down to is like, what is love? It's this unifying force. And it's like, okay, what is the uniform? What is the universe? Is it just all just love? This unifying force, this is unconditional force, which kind of like gets into the deeper layers of things. But yeah, so it's like, you kind of approaching it from the other end, and this is exactly what I want to create. And then the reason behind it, and then like, okay, here's the actual tangible physical action items. And then like, you continue to stack that up, week after week, month after month. And that's really kind of where I've been into now. And kind of a lot of my practices and my teachings have been related around like basically what you're talking about, like systematizing the whole process of personal development. So, literally like every day that you wake up, if, I get clear on, it's already, the systems are already all set in place. You just show up to the processes that you create for yourself, and that you're moving in the right direction. You're not just doing a bunch of things. Because again, the intention behind it is really the big factor. Because if your intention behind doing the things that you want to do is coming from this place of, again, like scarcity, like, oh, I don't have enough, or I'm scared that this thing is going to happen, and that's where you're operating from, and that's the intention that you're putting out, that's where you're going to continue to feed back to yourself. And so being able to focus on the result first, like, this is exactly what I want, this is why I want it. And then a lot of times the actual action is just, it comes naturally from that. And that's been my experience. Like, I used to get so overwhelmed with like I look at my day, there's usually 20 things or 30 things I feel like I need to do. And then it's like, actually boils down to, no, really, I just want 1 or 2 specific results out of this day. And then all the action items just come naturally out of that. So yeah, it's kind of my long-winded response to that.
Yeah, you're describing all the concepts that I've been really culminating on for quite a long time. It's actually kind of fascinating to hear it all just being streamed out from another person. And really, this is the
Mhm.
direction I'm trying to go with this. So I think we have to define like the actual canvas of reality. Like, what is the reality itself? I mean, that's like the game that we're all existing in right
Mhm.
now. Like, you're a character in the game. You have a mission objective. Well, why do we even have that at all? What is the purpose of the reality? And that's where we all start to like tap on these different kind of touch points where our culture is all trying to answer all these questions still from the older paradigms, and it's not really
Mhm.
holistically integrated. It's like, well, my purpose is to, make a lot of money and start a business. It's like that's an action item that is like a nice to have and something you should do, but what is your actual purpose, beyond that even as well? And so you have to get
Mhm.
to like those deeper layers, and then that's something that exists beyond the scope of what you're going to do in your ordinary and daily life and routine. And I think that when we have those parameters really set up well, like you're on purpose with yourself, then the business becomes
Mhm.
your way of actually like living your highest form of purpose, right? Because your actual
Mhm.
purpose is something, again, it's invisible, it's behind you, it's in like embedded into the screen of your reality. This is why all the spiritual people they fail, because they think their spiritual practice is all built on I need to go hang out in nature and like just sing kumbaya and meditate and find the secret of the universe. But you'll find your secret to your own personal universe when you go out there in the earth and do your thing and play
Mhm.
around and do whatever you want to do, and that's how you find your purpose. So you're on the right
Mhm.
track with all of it, man. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, bro. Yeah, and that again, that kind of like you said, like what is the whole kind of basis that all of this is stemming from, and that's really like the deeper layer. I mean, you're open to. I mean, we can open up that can of worms.
Yeah, man.
'Cause
I
that's
mean,
like
we're trying to open up everything. We're trying to get
okay,
what is reality and how can we design our way to understand it. So whatever it
okay.
entails.
Well, I had this 6 week program where this 6 week program that I run where it's like life magic manifestation method, and part of that like part of that process is teaching the RPM system, but the other part of that process is like once you learn the foundation is actually learning how to connect to your soul and like really get that, just tap into that inner intelligence. Some people call it higher self or soul. Really, it's just that inner guiding intelligence. That most people can maybe have an experience of, even though they may not necessarily have any kind of direct words or anything to put behind it. And and that's been a lot of my journey as well, because a lot of my challenges have been from, I would research a lot of things. I would like take these different courses. I would hire these different coaches, and they would tell me like, oh, just do these things, like this is what has worked for me, this is what has worked for all these other people, so it's going to work for you. And so I would try it and I would do it, and then shit wouldn't work. And at first I was like, well, am I just doing it wrong? Or like, am I an idiot? Like, am I just being lazy? What's going on here? But I kind of, after doing it enough times, I realized like, okay, I'm not stupid. I mean, I work harder than most people that I know. So it kind of started to get me to this place of, well, is there actually something to learn here? Am I being presented with all of this for a reason? And as I kind of like to started leaning more and more into it, it actually came as a byproduct of my own health challenges. Because I weigh like 100 and like 98, almost like 200 pounds right now. It's kind of like my training weight. But I was up like 250 at one point, and I was still like training, but I was like a big bowling ball, and like I wasn't eating healthy. I was kind of just that like mentality I talked about earlier, just like performance at all costs of just eating everything I possibly could just to gain weight, because I thought that was going to help get me stronger. And then before I knew it, like, I didn't even know it at the time, but I would start having all these skin issues, and like my sleep was shit, and I was just tired all the time, and like my joints hurt all the time. And again, I thought, oh, just take some Aleve or take some ibuprofen and just keep training. Like this is how it goes. But then after it kept getting worse and worse and worse, that's when I found Paul Chek, and he started talking about like what nutrition actually is and like how the body actually works. And then he also started talking about like connecting to the soul. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like, what does that even mean? I'm just trying to like find the right diet for me, and I would try like keto, and I tried doing this carnivore, and I try like, high fat or whatever, like all these different kind of modalities, counting my macros and calories and all this stuff. And I would see kind of, some results, but I still felt it wasn't really working for me. There was something I was missing. And so finally, after I like tried everything, it's usually how these things work. We like try everything to avoid the one thing that is actually going to work in the end. Or, the other saying is like, we'll spend 5 years to avoid the first 5 minutes of actually like doing the thing. And so finally I got to the point where it's like, all right, this dude keeps talking about connecting to your soul. Let me see what that actually is about. And I took one of his courses. He talks about connecting to your soul. And he basically it's pretty simple once you get down to it. But the basis is that you have to have a baseline. I call it like cleaning your antenna. Like you have to have a baseline of just overall health. Like if your whole system is toxic and bogged down, and you don't have any kind of general awareness of what's going on in your body, it's very difficult to establish that connection at a deeper level and be able to kind of feel these more subtle energies going on in your body. So you have to kind of go through this, more physical, symptomatic cleansing process to start to tap into the deeper stuff. But once you are able to tap into that, then you start to tap into this, this intelligence has been there the whole time. And that's, paradoxically, this whole process of personal development, at least that I'm coming to realize, it's not so much of you, like, here's this person that I want to be. And it's like, oh, and I got to do these things to be that person. It's really like, no, I've been this person the entire time, but I built all these layers up on top of that. And now I'm going through this process of removing all those ideas and all those layers just to be who I've been the entire time, and realizing that I am already that. Like one of a quote from Osho is like, you are where you are trying to reach. There's nowhere to go. It's like you are already that. And like what you are seeking is what's already seeking you, or what you're looking for is what's looking. But yeah, all these kind of like, esoteric metaphysical sayings, like I didn't understand at first, but then they all started to make sense. Like, oh, I see what they're saying now. But really all that kind of prelude of, connecting with your soul, of getting into that alignment with your own guiding intelligence, and allowing that to lead you to, where you are really supposed to be, and kind of, being able to draw these different experiences to you, even the challenging shit, because that's, that might be exactly what you need in that moment to, gain whatever experience or gain whatever lesson. But then all of this is kind of founded on this foundation of going back to the initial kind of thread of, what is reality? We talk about the soul, but like, what is the soul? What does that even mean? And I actually did, like I said, part of that course, there was one of the trainings was like, it's like an hour long where I just like break down, at least again, it's all ideas. So that's the problem. We like the whole, don't look at the finger, look at what it's pointing to. Like same thing when we use words, words like, they're very helpful at conveying information, but you can get too attached to the words when it's actually what you're trying to point to is beyond what words can even actually say, because, words in itself are kind of cutting devices when you're trying to talk about something that is encompassing all of it. But one way, like the easiest way, if I had to like just break this down as simply as possibly, again, and just for my own understanding, my own ideas that have served me, is if you kind of just take this down to, okay, where did I come from? And, you say, oh, well, I came from my mom, and either way, you keep going down and down and down. It's like, okay, I came from the earth, at some level like that, right? I'm a product of this earth. And it's like, okay, where did the earth come from? Like, okay, the earth is a product of this solar system. Okay. It's like, where did the solar system come from? Oh, it's a product of this galaxy. It's part of this galaxy. Okay, where did the galaxy come from? Like, oh, it's really just a part of this whole universe. And it's like, we really haven't, at a scientific level, we haven't found any kind of end to the universe. And I think even like, I think in like the deeper science, I don't keep up with those things, but they're kind of coming to find I guess like mystical teachers, like spiritual leaders have kind of known all along, where it's just like, there's this thing, it just cycles back on itself. Because fundamentally, if you think of, okay, the universe is everything. It's like in another, like a definition of God is that for which there is no other. And that's the whole concept in like Christianity, where you have God and the devil. But it's like, if you have God and then you have the devil, then who created the devil and God? There must be something that created those things. So it's like, in essence, God is that for which there is no other. And so, which in mathematical terms, you can equate to zero. Because zero is simultaneously it's empty of everything, but it's potentially full of everything. So it's this like infinite, it's this emptiness, it's this nothingness while simultaneously being everything. And so that way you can equate that with God. And God, if you had to like anthropomorphize or like personify God as this person just for the idea's sake, God is lonely, because if God is everything, there's no way for God to have an experience of itself. Like, if you think of this relationship, the only way we can have this relationship is because I have this idea of this is me here, and then I have this idea that this is you over there, and you have the same thing. You have this idea, this is me, that's you, and now we can have this relationship, and we can actually know each other. We can experience each other. We can experience each other like in love because of that relationship. But if we were both fused together, if we were just one thing, there'd be no difference. We wouldn't know who each other was. We'd just be one thing. And so if you take that out into like God as everything, there's nothing separate from it. And so the only way for God to experience itself is to create the illusion of separation. Like simultaneously how to create something inside of itself that also seemed outside of itself. So now it can have this, okay, here's this thing over here, and here's this thing over here. And now these things they can pretend that they're separate things. I don't know if you've ever read Stalking the Wild Pendulum by Itzhak Bentov, but he has an illustration of there, basically, like God playing hide and seek with itself. And so, God playing hide and seek with itself, where it's like, okay, here's this person over here, here's this thing over here. And it's like, oh, we don't really know that we're the same thing, but we think that we're separate. And if you had to think of it as like a game, it's like level 0 or level 1 is like complete separation. It's like my only concept is I'm this separate thing right here, and everything else outside of my idea of what I am is just completely separate, no question. And then like as we go through life, again, the only way for God to know itself is to have an experience of separation, so that ultimately it can have relationship with things, so that it can know all the different parts of itself, to ultimately come to know that it is everything. And so like level 100 or whatever the last level of the game is like, okay, we've had all these experiences, and because we've had all these experiences and learned all these different things, there's now this living awareness that I've been the whole thing the entire time. But I couldn't have known that if I didn't go through the whole sequencing of coming from that place of separation, which is like going back to the mathematical terms, is like 0 is everything, but from the 0 comes the 1, from like the nothingness, the infinite potential comes the 1, which is just everything. But same thing, like everything needs a way to experience itself. But because it's everything, the only way for that to happen is there's these sets of complementary opposites, which is like the illusion of imbalance, even though it's all perfectly in balance. And that's why you always have things in their complementary opposites, like hot, cold, day, night, light, dark, wet, dry. Everything comes in this package of complementary opposites, because there's always this fluctuation of the balancing and rebalancing, balancing and rebalancing. And so like your soul is really just like, one of those characters of God, an extension of God that is taking on this experience to have certain experiences, to be able to play the game, to go through these different levels, to ultimately draw whatever it needs to draw, to learn that whatever it needs to learn, have the relationships that it needs to have, to then come full circle to this place of, oh, I'm actually all of it. But I couldn't have known that if I didn't go through this whole process. And so that's where I think all of this comes like full circle into this process of manifestation and creating your reality. Because what I've come to realize is like there's the aspect of, we have these ideas about what we think we want. Like you said, like, oh, my purpose is to just make a bunch of money, which is like, is that, again, it's not a concept of right or wrong, good or bad. It's just a matter of, is that just the idea of what you think that you want coming from your own ideas about, how you think the world works and what you think is going to, make you feel happy or whatever you're, going after in life? Or is that ultimately like, this is my soul's calling to what I need in this particular lifetime to gain the experiences that are continuing to help my evolution, go playing that game, going from, whatever the next level up is. But the cool thing is once you recognize all of this and you can like, you actually know that you're playing the game, you can more actively play the game. Because for a long time, we're kind of like passive players because we don't really know that we're playing the game. We're just kind of in the game. It's kind of like I always think of Grand Theft Auto, where it's like GTA 5, I think like CJ, where it's like CJ, he's being played like, but in the world of Grand Theft Auto, you can do damn near anything that you want. And like CJ has this illusion of like free will. He's doing all these things that he wants to do. But then it would be like CJ finally realizes like, oh, I'm actually being played by this game and I'm actually a part of all of this whole experience. And then he's like, well, I already know what the end goal is. So let me use the same kind of, formulating ideas and installing these different programs and aligning myself to what my soul is already calling forth anyways. And I can be an active participant in the game now to keep playing. And the thing is, again, the point of the game isn't to win the game. The point of the game is just recognizing that you're playing the game so that you can just set the game up so you can keep on playing the game because there's nothing else to do. Because what does God do when it finally experiences it all of itself? It's like, oh, that was fun. Let's do it again. What else am I going to do here? So
Yeah,
that's
you're touching on
my evolution.
a lot of great points. That is sort of what is really deeply embedded into the game right now, is this sense of fear that I actually really need to do something. I need to save the world from the Illuminati taking over, and 2030 y'all we're all gonna go to shit and everything bad is gonna happen. I need to save this dimension. Something bad is gonna happen if I don't ascend the earth or something. And the thing is, when you
Mhm.
abstract it out further and further into where you're just a part of the entire reality, why would there even be such a consequence that lasts forever, that you eternally go to some bad place forever and never come out of? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like you're saying, geometrically, mathematically, the stuff doesn't even exist. So
Mhm.
you touched on like basically all the points that I've been really thinking about for my own evolution as well. I started my journey when I was 18. That's when I went on the detoxification journey, and all right, got into Paul Check as well, and just a bunch of like all the same type of people that you probably did as well. And
Mhm.
really, that's where I think I found myself as well. Is I want to kind of do everything all at once, you know?
Mhm.
Because for me, I can't focus on one thing. That was always something that never worked for me. It's like just
Mhm.
focus on this one little niche thing and just keep on hammering it until you're like perfected at it. For me, I always seen that if I start writing or if I start designing something or if I start doing something else, that skill set and that trait always matches over to something else as well. And so
Mhm.
how can you set up a system for you to do all these things at once? And it's been about 2 years since I've been actively in my own process of doing that. And I've gotten better at everything all at once as well. And
Mhm.
so I think it's also important to look at your life that way. Like we are multi-dimensional beings. We can do so many more things. Like you can't just be a fitness coach. Like that's unidirectional thinking. I mean, you're more than that. You're five different things, 10 different things. It's just there's almost like not enough time in the day to do it all. But what I try to do is I try to gauge my feeling, that intuitive sense right now on, all right, what is the feeling scape trying to tell me? Am I in a design sort of twinkling with pixels and rearranging stuff mode today? Or am I in, I need to go get a coffee and deeply contemplate mode? Am I in an action oriented, I need to, like you're saying, lift weights or go to the sauna mode? And you'll find that the more introspective you are with all these things, you can actually compartmentalize it down to the day. And so we have cycles within our day, like I'll go through an array of 4 or 5 different emotional, subtle, energetic landscapes, which all have their own signature template feeling. And I've now assigned when I do certain things in particular order, it's always based upon that signature feeling. I think that's another thing
Okay.
too that's going to be important to think about in the future is dynamically adjusting our day to work for us in the moment because we're always changing.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, it kind of, I guess there's two kind of primary threads or thoughts that come up from you sharing that. Like, one, I think that's been really the huge benefit of going through the process of really just tapping into that my own inner guiding intelligence. Because like it's even from down to like what food should I eat right now that is going to be most supportive for me. Because again, like no diet that you follow or no person that you work with, no matter how educated that they are, even me, like being able to like I can tap into my own inner intelligence. Like I don't have the potential that you have to be able to tap into your own guiding intelligence to tell you this is what is going to be the most ideal food for you to eat at this particular moment. And it's like once I kind of recognized that from even just a nutritional standpoint, I was able to extrapolate that out to all the different elements. And even now to the point, even when I'm training or even at a competition, I can like sit there and ask, okay, should I take this weight? If I'm like competing and trying to, lift the most amount of weights, like should I take this attempt or should I stay, at this weight? And I can kind of, there's those subtle different signatures of the feeling of it and just tapping into that. And really every time that I've like honestly, because again, your ego is very clever at being able to catch on to the games that you're like playing, trying to tap into, because it wants to, continue to fortify itself as this idea, this is me. Um, but if you're able to have the awareness to really tap into the like that's a soul level and have that authentic signature, then you can get that information and be able to like every time that I've done that, it's always been like the right decision or what's been most aligned to my growth at that particular moment. And so I've just learned to trust in that and lean more and more into that. So that's kind of like one side of that is just having that awareness to be able to, because like you said, like you even having the access to be able to feel into those subtle different feeling scapes for the different kind of modes that you're in. I think a lot of times, and I think it helps because I work with so many people that are like literally starting at ground zero. Like I'm overweight and I feel like shit and I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And just having like zero awareness of anything. Because I think, because you and I, we've been on this journey for so long. And so it's easy like, oh yeah, I have these subtle different feelings in my body and I can know when I'm in these different modes. But then we kind of go to try to like relay that to the, general population that needs to hear it. It's like, what? Like, I have no clue what you're talking about. Yeah, I feel like I feel full or I feel hungry. It's about the extent that it goes to. And so like that whole process, like you said, you had to go through that detoxification process of being able to kind of step that whole process back to like, what's step one? Even looking at it from a business standpoint, it's like when you're, wherever your target client is, your target audience, it's like, okay, where is this person currently at in their life? Like, am I targeting my 18-year-old self? What was the language that I was using? How was I talking about this thing? It's like, okay, well, maybe you're not ready to connect with your soul yet, but we need to, get you off of, eating bagels and oatmeal every day and get you to eat some like more real food. And like that's step one. And then we can continue to make that progression. And the other thread of that, and this is something that I think just being an athlete and just, my goal of in performing at a high level on a consistent basis, because there's a lot of times where, I wake up and, my body's kind of achy. Like right now, I'm like getting ready for a big competition. So it's like I'm really kind of, at the high end of like pushing myself physically. And, I wake up and I'm like kind of achy, but I know like I'm still gonna go train today. And even though I may not necessarily, I'm kind of tired, I don't necessarily like feel like it. And I think again, this is where the difference is of like being able to tune into, am I just
creating this idea of how I think I feel to align with whatever I feel like is going to be the most kind of comfortable thing in the moment. And like subtly, coming from this place of just my own ego's ideas about what I think I want right now. Um, or is this actually in alignment with what I need in this moment to be all that I have the potential to be? Because a lot of times, like going back to that concept of surrender, like I used to think surrender was like, oh, if I just kind of sit here, I set the intention, then all this stuff's just going to flow right to me. I don't have to do anything. But then I learned, like, no, sometimes intention looks like I'm doing the hardest shit I've ever done in my life. And I'm like pushing myself further than I ever thought possible. And I'm showing up to the gym, even when I feel like I have nothing left. And I'm still finding ways to reach new and new limits that I didn't even know that were there. Where I'm like putting myself in these situations where it's like, oh shit, I need $1,000 to pay for my rent, but I have this calling, I need to invest in this course, but how am I going to get that money? And I'm like putting myself in this difficult situation, or like hitchhiking. It's like, oh, I'm just going to leave home and I don't really know how I'm going to do any of this, but this is what I feel called to do. So I think there's that other side of the coin of, really being able to tap into the awareness of that, of like, where is this actually coming from? Because in my experience, like working with a lot of people, especially like men, is that we find very, very clever ways to justify inaction. And a lot of times it looks like, oh, I'm going to focus on this thing, or I'm going to do this thing. When it's like, no, what you really need is to find maybe those 1 to 3 things, those like non-negotiable things, and do those things unquestionably every single day. And again, not so much about what you get out of doing those things. Like for me, one of those things is my daily Tai Chi practice for like 20 minutes every single morning, like taking a cold shower. It's just like no question, non-negotiable, just happens. And again, like, yes, those things in itself have had a lot of positive benefits, but more so just the fact that I committed myself to something to do on a daily basis, and I upheld that commitment with myself, and I built that kind of discipline reservoir within myself. Whereas again, it's not even discipline anymore, because it's just it's just part of what I do. That is what carries over into everything else. Because so much of the things that we want, especially when we're trying to like really, break novel ground and like, pioneer different things, it takes, like doing something extremely interesting and novel oftentimes takes doing very seemingly menial and mundane tasks for an extraordinary amount of time until it builds up. I think of like, what's it, Michelangelo, like the sculptures, where it's like you've got this just big marble block, and it's like, there's this masterpiece in here, but literally all you can do is just tiny little chisels for days and days and months and even years on end, until it finally, just those tiny little menial actions create this masterpiece. And so yeah, that's kind of like my approach in that regard, and kind of what I've experienced for myself.
That kind of makes me think, do we have an intrinsic optimal form that exists as like a stateless thing that we're trying to access? Or do we have to create that form and kind of build it our own way? Because when you are accessing into what you call your higher self or whatever, it feels like a very familiar template of all your attributes. It feels like the thing that you have already had before, but sometime during like your childhood or whatever, you lost it. And so part of your life is to recapture and like kind of chisel away at the negative patterns or the things that aren't efficient for you to then get back into your original form. I think that's up for debate too. Is like, do we have a form we're supposed to be? Is there a should be this way?
Mhm.
Or is it really up to the subjective, create your entire identity 100% in every aspect? Because there are things which are definitely predetermined about ourselves. Your personality, it will like kind of stick into something that you'll find later on. And there's parts of yourself that do appear to be fixed. I just don't know if it's the whole picture or not. What do you think?
Mhm. That's a great point you bring up, and it kind of brings up the whole like really concept of time, because a lot of times we think in terms of like relativity of like back then, or even if we're thinking in terms of lifetime, it's like, oh, these lifetimes ago I was this person doing this thing and I built up this skill that is kind of encoded into who I am now, and then I'm carrying this thing into the future, when in essence, like, yeah, the soul is this kind of this unique, in a way, it's like this unique encapsulation of all that it is, but it's like an archetype, it's like a tree. A tree, you're not going to find any two trees alike. It's like you never find any two humans alike. You have some that are very similar, maybe the same kind of species, but there's no two that are alike. And but fundamentally, it's all coming from the same thing. Like fundamentally, it's all God. And so I think kind of the answer to that question, and this has kind of been my own, like every time I come to these kind of things within myself, it always comes back to, well, if the potential is infinite, then really it's both. It's not like an either or. Every time, that's kind of been a practice of mine. Like every time I find myself thinking in terms of either or, I always ask myself, well, is there a potential for both? And if the potential is infinite, like the answer is always yes. There's always a potential for both, or all of it. And so I've kind of, so I guess in that regard, maybe we are simultaneously, there is this kind of encoding of who we have the potential to be, but we also have this free will to be able to create whatever version of that self that we want. But I think this kind of threads in like the law of karma, though, because again, it's the balance and the rebalance. It's like the zero equals the one equals the two, which is the complementary opposites, always fluctuating. So it's like the choices that we have made, again, like in the relativity of time, are having this continuous balancing and rebalancing effect. And so we may have this intention of, this is who I want to be, this is the life that I want to create, this is my dream for who I am right now, while at the same time we're still reenacting all of this kind of karmic baggage, for lack of a better term, from choices that we've made in other lifetimes in different realms, or whatever you want to call it, that are still being played out in what we are experiencing right now. And this is kind of, I don't know if this somebody else came up with this term and I heard it somewhere, but so far I haven't heard anybody video say it, but it's like I think of it as the term a spiritual inertia, where in essence it's like, because of that inertia that we've already created through the law of karma, through the actions and the balancing and the rebalancing, that's why, just because you think about something, and even if you set the intention to it and you start taking action, it's like it doesn't just pop up. Even though, yes, it is already there, it doesn't just show up. And that's why for some people, it may take way, longer to achieve a certain kind of result than other people, because there's all of these other factors and all of these other kind of the balancing and rebalancing effect of karma taking place that has to be worked through. And I kind of like, just from my own experience of life, because again, like working with a bunch of different coaches, like doing like all the right things and still finding myself in a place of like, fuck, why the fuck do I still suck? Like, what's going on? And then I kind of recognize this, like, oh, this is exactly how it is supposed to be. And again, that's a potential to view it in that way. It's like, this is exactly how it's supposed to be for me to be able to learn the things that I'm here to learn, that are ultimately going to help me to get to that place of that kind of seamless manifestation that we are all, kind of have this ideal of, where, I think it and then it just pops up, where it's like at one level, yes, that is true. And then on another level, well, there's also all these other factors that are at play. So I guess that's my 2 cents on that.
It's like a trailing time system. So the more you build yourself, there becomes like another like extension of yourself that's slowly like outside your perimeter of all these different options that you can then build
Hmm.
yourself into again. And so it's like a dynamically generating node system. That's kind of how I visualize it. So
Hmm.
the fixed state that we can access is our current potential, but then at that potential, there's going to be more potentials of the potential.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes me, I forgot what I was going to talk about because I mean, you're kind of really wild to listen to, man. I'll be honest with you. It's just like,
Thanks.
it's kind of crazy actually. And it really makes me think, like, where's all this really going? I mean, it is as if we're in different dimensions, right? We're in different dimensions around different levels of the game. And, you know, we're all communicating at our different levels. And I think that kind of needs to be brought back into the world. This idea
Hmm.
of a hierarchy, of a level system, of like, all right, you're talking to someone who's a level 10 right now and you're a level 3. It's kind of like something that's not really like the feminine perspective may not like this part, but this is where we're also experiencing the kind of the split between masculine and feminine curriculums. I mean, when I was a younger kid, I desperately needed to know what my level was in reality. And if I was at a higher level or if I was at a lower level, just give me a damn level so I can know what I am.
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
kind of need that as young men. It's like, all right, I'm a level 3. I suck. Great. At least I know. All right, so when a level 10 is talking to me, all right, I now know that I can trust this person. They can help me grow. And we're kind of in this split right now where all there are no levels. We're all love and light. Everything's equal. It's gonna be fine. Nothing matters. Kind of a vibe in this collective consciousness. And I think it kind of sucks, man. We need to bring back like the elder mentality in a way. We need to bring back this person has the knowledge and they specialize in this area. So we all go to this person to learn this particular thing. And this person over here has this particular knowledge. And like kind of how can we build a digital school where we all learn things from each other and kind of build
Hmm.
our own little map of ourselves? That's where I'd like it all to go eventually.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I agree. There's like a lot of different ways to really take that, and I do also agree like the balancing of the masculine and the feminine because we kind of like because of all of the, I guess like patriarchal built systems that we've been living through, which again, like if you look back in history, the history like it's pendulum. It's like we swing back and forth and back and forth. And for a time, like we needed that structure, that kind of logical. Let me put things in these chronological order. This is this exact system that is going to create this precise result. Like the whole concept of the kind of scientific method was like helped us get to a certain point. But now it's like we, just like we always do, we take things as far as we can take them, and take them to the extreme, and we built up all this momentum and all these ideas that we I forget who said it, but it's like, we're taught to question all of our beliefs except the things that we really believe in. Those we never question at all. And so we have all these very deep indoctrinated beliefs about how the world works just because that's how we've been living through it. And then we don't question these things. But then it's like ultimately we get to that place of extremism, which I think is like really kind of what we're experiencing right now, which is simultaneously, it's like a blessing and a curse. Because one thing at one end, it's like, yeah, shit's extreme and very chaotic. But the chaos is precisely what gives the relative perspective of, oh, this shit's actually ridiculous. It's like with like you were talking about Christianity earlier, where it's like you kind of plug that into your system of like, oh, there's this dude up in the sky maybe, and he's watching everything that I do, and if I don't do these certain things, I'm gonna like go somewhere and I'm gonna burn in hell or something. It's like you put these things. It's like, well, I don't know about that. Like maybe that's not how it works. And you just again the questioning, and then all the masculinity, like the structure, which now we're like you said, it's kind of like there's the other side of the pendulum where it's like, oh, we're all love, we're all light, like we're all one thing, we're all equal. And again, like that has its benefit of way of viewpoint, but it has to be balanced. And that's why for me it's like creating the structure that allows the flow. It's like using the masculinity because I kind of fell into that too, where I was almost like afraid to use my intellect because it's like I'm thinking about things too rationally. I'm like too much into my head. I'm trying to be too logical about this. I need to just sit back and let it come to me, kind of thinking. And then I was like, well, there's both sides. Like we need both sides, and there's benefit to both. And then because in school, like I was supposed to go to Purdue to be an engineer. Like I was
like really, really good at math and like science and physics and all that stuff. But then I kind of like got into the whole spiritual side of things, and I was kind of like, well, I got to get out of that. I'm too much into my head. But then I was like, no, I can use that. It's a tool that I have access to. I can be super logical and structured and put systems with precise measurements into place. I think it's just when you focus on one and you lose sight of the other that things get out of hand. Because again, just like with love, it's like we haven't really, at least we haven't figured out a way to logically, mathematically measure something that most people would agree is the most important thing in their life. But we also say in the same breath, if you can't measure it, you can't weigh it, then it doesn't exist. It can't exist. And so it's the balance. And so that's where, again, I think it's this simultaneous like individuation process of people being able to access more and more of themselves to find out who they actually are and like, be their own unique individuals with their own unique skill sets, their own unique geniuses. Because, that's like when we look at like geniuses, we label somebody as a genius. We really get down to it. It's really just somebody being fully themselves and accessing who they are and just expressing that. And so when we're able to tap into that within ourselves, instead of trying to live up to all these ideas and expectations about what we think that we should be, is that ultimately we just, that's kind of where we find ourselves now. It's like we scroll through social media, we see all these things and we're all trying to like compare each other to everybody else. And simultaneously it's just creating this like, sameness land of everybody's just trying to do the same shit. And like, everybody's just trying to do the same shit, like maybe slightly better than the other person just to try to get a little bit of an edge, but we're still just doing the same shit. And, that really, it's very profitable because it feeds into the whole like, scientific materialistic paradigm, the whole medical system. But ultimately learning how to be you is the process of self-love, which ultimately starts to expand your sense of self. Because even at like a basic level, it's like you start to realize, well, this air that I'm breathing, I guess it comes into me, but I wouldn't be here without this air. But this air kind of comes from outside of me. But in essence, since I wouldn't be here without this air is kind of part of me. And so my sense of self now expands. Like I appreciate the air that I breathe and I'm surrounded by it. And same thing with the food that I eat. I wouldn't be here without this food that I eat. And the better the food that I eat, the better I'm able to feel and perform and, be able to enjoy my life. But that food ultimately is dictated, by the soil and how healthy the soil is. So now it's like, oh, well, I love myself and I want to fuel myself the best that I can. So now I care about the soil. Now I love the soil because that's an extension of me. And the soil is, it's integrated into the whole earth. So again, it's like the whole process of individuation is this catalyst to the process of like the indivisibility, the kind of the unification. And so at least from my perspective, that's kind of where I see like the opportunity moving forward and like having, teachers like teaching these kinds of things, but again, like at various different levels. Because again, somebody at like level 10, we're talking about, this is the soul and this is the nature of reality. Talking to somebody that like just gets out of breath time, like trying to tie their shoe and their main concern is like, how am I going to make it up these flight of stairs? They don't give a shit about any of those stuff. It's like, I just want to feel a little better. And so being able to have like different levels of the teaching, which is kind of like the way that I've structured my different businesses, is like they operate kind of at different levels and kind of like a hierarchy, which again goes back to the concept of a hierarchy. Like, because we can say, oh, it's all love, it's all light, it's all one thing. But if nobody's at that level of consciousness to be able to actually understand and have a knowing of what that actually means, then it's more empty words. But if you can take somebody like, oh, actually, we need to start down here at level 1. Like you're at level 1. There's nothing wrong with level 1. We all start at level 1. And even like the whole human life experience is this kind of the microcosm of the macrocosm. Like we start out with this complete memory loss of who we actually are. And like we start growing up and we start to have this sense of self. And depending on, the society that we were born in, the parents that we had, sometimes we get more and more shit layered on top of it so that we really forget, or we have some guidance, or we have life experiences that allow us to kind of start to remember, oh, this is who I am. This is what I'm here to do. These are my unique skills that I have. And so, being able to set systems up to be able to teach people, this is who you are. This is, what you're here to do. These are the unique skills that you have. Like, yes, maybe you need to start down here, drinking some more water, getting some more movement, and eating a little better. But then as you continue to progress, and again, it's not a concept of right, wrong, good or bad. There's nothing wrong with people at level one. Like you studied Ken Wilber, like the structured stages of consciousness. There's nothing inherently wrong. He talks about like at level 6, where it's like, I think it's the grain level, where you start to see everything as one thing, but simultaneously you're judging other people for not being at your level and not seeing the things the way that you see them, which again is creating this separation. Whereas like the integral level is like, oh, all the levels are good. Like they're all okay. We just need to create systems to be able to accommodate for all of those different structure stages of consciousness to help people that want to progress, but also to be able to, for the people that have no inclination to progress their level, which again, it's not right, wrong, good or bad, to be able to continue their existence and not interfere with other people trying to continue their own evolution. So it kind of seems in line with what you're saying.
It really reminds me of this like collective narrative that we have right now. I mean, you don't really seem like someone who is like out there ready to go vote for the next president. Like, who's going to be my next president? Donald Trump or the like. It doesn't even make any sense at this level of, or I'm going to sign a piece of paper and like some other dude up there I've never met, he's going to do it for me. And so we really are kind of breaking through all these paradigms of like this stuff doesn't make any sense. And it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, the weakest link of all of our like people here on earth are always going to drag down the people who are trying to grow. And so I think that everyone intrinsically, they want to grow, they just don't know the path to go. They haven't had the right teacher, they haven't found the right person. And so we do have to create a structure for where everyone is at least supply the education. And everyone's going to resonate with different types of teachers, and to the extent like we can't really control who's going to resonate with who, we can make customer persona and all these sorts of things to kind of map out a projection of it. But really it does kind of come down to this universal source energy of where people are just going to get pulled to. I mean, a lot of what the self-awakening journey is really, like what you were saying, is learning how deeply connected you are with the air around you and realizing that your inner body is also a type of air. And then you have your skin and membrane surface layer and the external world. And awakening is kind of like compressing that to where you're just like a flat screen. And you're just like, you really are like a part of the actual game of reality. And when you're not, it feels like you're so densely physical. You can feel each organ as like a block holding you down. You can feel every energy kind of point like it's this thing that kind of is pulling on you in your whole life when you're just trying to grow and ascend, and as you get more and more awake in this dimension, all those things kind of disintegrate and become more like these particles of yourself that you can tap into, like little orbs. Like, what is like my center area telling me right now, and how is that interfacing with another thing? What is this thing on my like top left corner, which is always kind of feeling something here? So it's kind of getting people to awaken to the multidimensionality of their senses and the directions and where things are. And all of that is a byproduct of this kind of work. It has to be done through education and through experience simultaneously.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of like recognizing that we all have our own different modes of experience. Because like, again, the way that, Raymond experiences the world and is able to like map out his experience of like, I feel this thing over here, I feel this thing over here. Like there's a lot of parallels because it's all based on the same kinds of principles. But then somebody else, like for instance, me and my girlfriend, were like the way that we experience things is just completely different. And we've had to learn that about each other. Like I'm very mental in the sense that even when it comes to my feelings and even in my body, it's like it's a mental experience for me. And now I can just move my consciousness and like I can feel, okay, here, this is what my knee feels like. This is what my stomach is feeling like. But it's like processing in that mental realm where she's very much kind of energetic and more emotionally, just more of the feminine quality where it's like there's no kind of rational thinking behind it. It's more of like, this is just this feeling that I have, which really I think is the why I believe like entrepreneurs are ultimately the heroes, the aligned entrepreneur, like I call it, like the soulpreneurs are really kind of the heroes in the story because we're the ones that are trying to like create this pathway and aren't afraid to try to experiment with all these different novel ideas and like creating these different education systems, creating these different modes of communication, creating these different structures, and ultimately realizing that it is all an expression of our own personal development. Because you can't authentically take somebody past the point in which you have been able to take yourself. And so like being able to do that work on yourself and expanding your own awareness, which again is a process of self-love, of just being able to embrace more and more of what you actually are, and then being able to then systematize that and then communicate that in a way that can be received. And that's ultimately like that's your message, like that's your like marketing in sales, like that is our service. Because we can, again, that's part of my challenge is like as entrepreneurs, like, and I'm sure you can maybe attest to this, like when you start to have awareness of all these different ideas and it's like, okay, it all makes sense, I see it, like why aren't these people doing these things, what's going on? And then you try to like throw all these ideas out there, but nobody's at a place to receive them. And so, it all falls on deaf ears, no matter how good your idea is, no matter how good your service is, no matter how good your, 6-week coaching program is. If the messaging isn't behind it to be able to align with what people are actually telling themselves about what they think that they need, even if it's not what they actually need, then, you're in a sense, at least in my view, it's like you're doing a disservice. And it's like it's part of your service to be able to align the way that you can communicate these things, which again is going down to the systems of like, okay, here are these people at like level 1. This is how I have to talk to these people to be able to, get their attention and to help them. Here's these people at level 2. This is how I can talk to these people. But again, it's all, you don't have access to these levels until you've accessed them and recognized them within yourself, which again is like being you. That's why I think on that live or something yesterday, I think it was you said like I forget exactly what you said, but essentially I interpreted it as like your niche is you. Like the more authentically you that you can become, the more your own unique genius and service will be able to express itself. And therefore nobody's going to be able to, you're not going to be comparable to anybody else, even though paradoxically you're going to be more in line with everybody else. And you're going to be able to resonate with more and more people by being authentically yourself. Because, we kind of work as mirrors of one another. But yeah, I totally agree, man. Like, I think that's what we're here to do. I mean, that's what this is. It's like a part of this service that you feel called to do, that we both feel called to do, of like creating this platform of education. To at least, even like plant the seed. Because again, words are just words, but people can feel and like resonate with what's going on behind them and between them.
Yeah, man, the future is being real. That's what the
That's right.
future is.
That's
And
right.
all we can do is be real. I mean, all of our favorite people that we watched early on, like Elliot Holst, back to that from the beginning, they were real. There was never any tricks or anything crazy. It was just some dude talking in his garage about life and weightlifting and spirituality and how it all kind of works together. And
Yeah.
so we're just becoming those own little like personal bubbles of creation for other people to step into. And so, I mean, you probably know about Dan Coe, right?
I've heard of the name, but not
Oh,
familiar
well,
with any of his work.
his whole thing is kind of turning self-development and spirituality and all this thing that we've basically talked about into a business so that you're marketing to
Mm-hmm.
your younger self like you
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, and how by doing that you can kind of get rid of the shame around money or the shame around selling or all this kind of stuff because you're actually offering something that's valuable. And we're switching
Mm-hmm.
into an economy right now where the value exchange is information and it's like kind of leveling up our life experiences. And so you're offering people a level up on their life for like a couple $100 or whatever you charge. It's like that's an insane risk to reward transaction. And so in this community right now of digital creators, that's what we're all doing is we're trying to like give people little lifelines to level up to where we are. And then we ourselves are also doing that with people who are ahead of us. And we're creating pathways to a better reality. I mean, there's all this talk that technology is evil. Technology is going to put us into like a cybernetic AI grid, and we're all going to like be systematically attacked by some AI in the future or something. But when you really look at technology, man, I mean, it's magical that we can just hop on these computers, interfaces, have all these different parallel functions running, stream stuff, and communicate. I mean, largely why we're have really gotten much bigger in the world and are more sophisticated, at least consciously, is through our use of technology and Wi-Fi and all the fun stuff that we do. And so, more technology is better. We don't gotta fear AI or any of this stuff. We just gotta, make use of it in the best way.
Yeah, I mean it's all tools. I think it was like Rudolf Steiner said, it's like we will continue to create technologies outside of ourselves, either until we either destroy ourselves or until we realize that everything that we're trying to create outside of ourselves is already within us. And again, it's like the question is, which happens first? Do we destroy ourselves in the name of technology, or do we realize that? But I think again, it's like it's a bad thing. It's the way that things are with the technology, at least from my perspective, when kind of like looking out at these things, because I don't like super tap into all the new like AI and all that stuff, even though I just kind of have a general awareness of it. Is like, again, we're trying to create all these things outside of ourselves, not realizing that it's something that we already have access to. And again, like we create things from the level that we are currently, or our own current understanding of how the world works. So it's like if we think, oh, there's this new thing that's going to help us, do this thing, and we're not necessarily aware of all the other consequences of, like again, like what's an iPhone take to make for what it functions, like how much of the, is extracted, and you can, I think there's like actual statistics and stuff like that. And again, it's not like this right or wrong, good or bad, because these are all tools. Like obviously this computer, that we're interfacing, this internet, like we wouldn't be able to have this conversation right now if it wasn't for these things. But I think just continuing that overall level of awareness to recognize the consequences of our actions, while simultaneously recognizing that, again, everything that we're creating is already inherent within us. And even like, like crystals, where it's like, I don't know how much you like believe in the what's the Atlantis, and like going back into history and things like that, where it's like a lot of these, with the different things that I've researched and studied, like there's kind of these records that a lot of these things already existed. Like even some of the technologies that we use today is like they already have some kind of form of it before the whole like cycling and all that kind of stuff. And so again, it's like, but they also had a deeper understanding of the actual internal technology that we had access to. And even like indigenous tribes that being recorded to like send telepathic messages across like hundreds of miles, and like, yo, I'm going to meet you here at this time and I'll be there. And then like they show up and like, oh yeah, I got your message, brother. Like that type of stuff where it's like, it's already there, but we've externalized ourselves so much. And again, like the scientific materialistic paradigm, it's like everything is, we interface with so many things outside of us that we forget to look back into where it's all stemming from in the first place. But yeah, we can, use the hell out of these tools, but don't let them use us.
It's as if we remember all those remnants and still have those like integration layers that were like where the things are existing, but we haven't quite fully developed it. It's like I have this sense that I could telepathically communicate to you, but like I just can't quite do it, but I have the sense that I could. Or you have that sense about like every other aspect of life. Like I could make something like teleport or lift something up. I see a lot of people on Instagram, they do those things where they like kind of channel their like Tai Chi powers. Like I would think what you're trying to do, and try to make things move and stuff. I mean, this stuff is coming back, and it's all about providing the education to like, all right, how real are these things, and can we develop them? I mean, that's a big part of reality. I mean, if we all can just do that and do all these sorts of things, I mean, well, there we go. That's a pretty big
Yeah.
mission. And so, yeah, we're all trying to develop the real technologies of ourselves. Like life is a technology. Our own internal world is a technology. We all have these plugins and add-ons and little digital tools inside ourselves. And can we create forms for them? Build more tools around it. I mean, you can close your eyes and ask your own personal Google ChatGPT in your own mind about anything about your life and get an answer, and so you can do that as well. I mean, how many things are like that, and how can we build these tools inside ourselves? That's what I'm really interested in, is what are all the tools? Can we create a physical representation and container around what the tool is to better understand it, while simultaneously working on building it into us metaphysically? That's
Yeah.
when I think of reality designers, I think that's really the future of where we're kind of going. Is all the stuff that we
Yeah.
talked about, but that in particular.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really like, again, kind of going back to the process of manifestations. Like you have this idea and the intention behind it, and then, taking having the charge and then the action into creating something physical. Like, even like the idea of an airplane was once thought to be like, oh, we can't fly through the sky. That's impossible. Or like running a 4-minute mile. So like thought to be impossible, or like going into space, like thought to be impossible, until somebody gave themselves the permission, or maybe it was just in the collective and we were at the right time to somebody receive the transmission, like, yo, this can actually happen. And I believe in this. But you can only like choose to believe in those things or have those ideas to the level of even your own awareness. Because there's certain ideas, like we start talking about God and the universe and like 0 = 1 = 2, like that, all these different things where at a certain level is like, it just makes, there's no context. It makes zero sense. And so we're not even having these ideas, even though they exist, which again, kind of gets into I guess I'm thinking of, do all these ideas already exist, and we just kind of bring ourselves to a certain level of awareness to actually be able to receive them and like piece them together into different things. It's like, if you can have that idea and you can give yourself the permission to believe that it is possible and believe that you have the potential to create it, then like that's your pathway to then taking that, oh, here's this internal technology that I've been developing, and I believe that I can create this physical manifestation so that I can more kind of better understand it in a physical dimension, and then actually being able to create that.
Yeah, I think that's what our life is about. Like, on the surface level, our life is filled with, all right, I have a job, and then I have to start a business, and then I gotta do this or that kind of thing. And on the surface level, that's like the canvas of our physical life playing out. But behind the surface of our reality, there's all these metaphysical and spiritual mechanics happening. And so that's what we're actually really doing. But so, we may find that starting a business or starting a YouTube channel or doing this kind of stuff is our purpose and our calling at a certain level. But then what we're really doing is learning expression, learning how to be in front of other people, learn how to handle energy. So that also plays into the system as well, as what are all those characteristics and traits that we can learn, but through different actions that are purely physical. Because physical is the easiest way to just learn things.
Yeah.
I mean, the spiritual stuff, I'm kind of getting out of it. I mean, I was sort of in that stuff for a really long time, ever since I was 18. Like I said, I've just been in that world. But the more I'm in the actual earth, I'm in 3D doing, real life stuff, learning coding or doing whatever. These are the most spiritual things that I've personally found I can do, is just
Yeah.
create, design, make things. And that's how you find at least my purpose.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's kind of like the whole purpose of this physical reality, is because it's set up in a way where we get such quick feedback on our actions and intentions. Because again, like you can think about, oh, I'm going to kill this person. You can have this intention,
And it's like you don't really, yeah, even though that there's kind of this energetic signature behind that, but you like never act on it. And so you never really have this like physical knowing of what that experience is like. You can imagine it and you can maybe watch somebody else do it, but until it's that felt experience, but until you know, that's just one example, obviously, but like till you actually go and do this thing, and then you have that feedback. Oh, this is that what that experience is like. And again, like God experiencing itself in all of these different ways, you know, from the saint to the thief to the murderer to the businessman to like all of these different characters and all of these different masks and all of these different things that we get to play. And for me, that's kind of like the fun part about being an artist is I get to purposely, like, I give myself permission to purposely put on all of these different masks. It's like when I, like, in a sense, like, play the play, like, play the game on purpose. Like, when I make music, I can purposely put on a different mask of, like, you know, like, talk about some vulgar shit and, like, you know, toxic masculinity and, you know, typical, like, stuff you hear in, like, rap and hip hop. Or I can, you know, talk about, like, you know, personal development and, like, love and, like, you know, taking care of yourself and being healthy, like, and these things as well. And it's like it's all part of the experience that we get to have, and it's all part of that mode, like you said, of like being able to express. Because the more you actually physically express yourself and all of who you are, and don't like cut different pieces of yourself off because it's like, oh, I don't like this part of me, or oh, I shouldn't show this part of me. But the more you express that, the more you get that physical feedback, which kind of, as you're saying, is like it accelerates the spiritual process, which for me, I guess, goes back to the like being an athlete and training, where it's like I get to physically like do something extremely physical every single day, and I get that very visceral physical feedback on a daily basis. And that's been one of the things that's helped me evolve spiritually more than anything, which is like something that's purely a physical outlet. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, we're all switching on different identities and masks, and that's a real sign of evolution, really, when you think about it, is when you can just try on a mask and have it lightly be over top of you and not have to be so like sunken into it and to really like be the character when you can kind of just like transfer it on and transition into different identities just to try it out. You know, that's a sign of growth to just be able to do that. I think
Yeah.
that's where all this kind of stuff, like in the culture right now, where it's all about like I'm transitioning, or I'm a transgender, I'm a male female type. It's all kind of a culmination in a way of this dynamic playing out, where we're all collectively growing, and we feel this fluidity of our identity. And parts of you like can be feminine at a certain point. Some you can be like hyper masculine, and we're all transitioning between these identities. And that's sort of what the culture is kind of going through right now, especially this younger generation. They're coming on so activated and turned on and like electromagnetically charged that they're kind of being diverted into unserving ideas, but like the essence of what they feel is still correct. But then you'll get far right Republicans be like, no, ban all this stuff, ban everything is terrible. And they kind of throw out what the actual message is from a higher level of what these people are really trying to do internally to cultivate that freedom in all aspects of their expression. And so the whole system kind of, you know, we have to basically reinvent. Here's the new paradigm. Here's the new rule book for reality. Here's the interactions that we understand and know, and stuff like that. We have to recreate like the rule book for reality, but make it fit certain paradigms, and also like make it loose enough that it's not as rigid. A new Bible, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's like the way to go about that is like it's this paradox, because it's again it goes back to the kind of the individual that leads to the indivisible. And like in the sense it's like learning how to each create our own Bibles for our life, because anytime we're trying to follow somebody else's Bible, ultimately we're going to be cutting off different parts of our experience that are unique to us, which is continuing to uphold the veil of separation in our own experience. And so it's like learning from all of these different realms, learning from all of these different teachers and like all of these different perspectives and all these different like Bibles,
but then ultimately taking all the like learning the principles and taking all those different ideas to activate your own intelligence that is still connected with all this other intelligence because it's all the same shit, but it's your own unique expression, like your own unique soul expression of that, which then is activating you. Because again, like when you follow other people's Bibles, it's now you can, now you're creating these belief systems where you just start to blindly hold on to things and blindly, like, even your identity, when you're talking about, like how the way that we identify ourselves is becoming more and more fluid, which isn't inherently a bad thing. But then if it's coming from this place of, I don't know who I am, so I'm just trying to hold on to all of these different ideas. And I'm like, now I'm just attaching myself to ideas about what I think I should be. Then again, it's like it kind of halts that whole evolutionary process, because it's now we're just continuing to uphold the veil and not allowing ourselves to be all of it. It's like knowing that we can be all of it, but we don't, simultaneously, we're all of it and we're none of it at the same time. It's like become so much of everything that you realize that you're no thing. You were none of it and all of it to begin with.
Yeah, man, it's one huge paradox, the whole thing. It's like this way, then it's another way, then it's this way again, but on another level it's not that way at all. It's just crazy, man.
Yeah.
Reality is so
Layers and
strange.
layers. It's fun. That's like the whole fun of it when you get down to it, at least I guess from my own experience, because it's like you ask a certain question and then you get certain answers, and then you realize that there's other questions that come up, and then they realize there's better ways to ask different questions that lead to different answers, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on. And it's like you never end, and that's like that is the fun of it. We have a tendency to get so caught up in trying to like win the game and like, oh yeah, I'll get to this place and then I'll be happy, or I'm gonna make $1 million and then it'll be good, then I'll be free. And then like even if we do get to that place, then either we find out that it wasn't what we actually wanted in the first place, or we just find like, oh, now I want to have $10 million. Now I want to have this next thing. Which is cool because, we can have these goals and set these goals and then do it. But if we get so attached to the outcome that then when we reach the outcome, we find that it wasn't actually the thing that we wanted, then we're just continuing to like perpetuate this loop when it's like, it's really the whole point of playing the game is we can just keep playing the game. I think it was James Carse. He wrote a book called Finite and Infinite Games where he kind of breaks this down of like, so many of our structures are built on the principle of playing a finite game. It's like even the way that we, extrapolate things from the earth, it's like, oh, we've got so much resources and we're just playing this game and hoping that we can survive long enough to maybe, somebody else is going to take care of it later down the line. It's like, no, can we create anti-fragile systems that actually get better and better the more that we use them so that we can just keep on playing the game for the sake of playing the game and continuing like designing our reality just for the sake of designing our reality, because what else is there to do? And like working within all these different paradoxes, not necessarily trying to like get rid of them all, but knowing that that's part of the game and that's part of the fun. Because inherently behind the whole paradox is like the big paradox of it's all of it. It's not either or, it's both and it's all of it.
Yeah, we're here as the new creators to upgrade the game. Go to version 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever version we're on. Sometimes it seems like we're on version 1000.0, but
Yeah.
we're doing it. Every day we're trying to just
man.
get a little bit better. And the more you design yourself, that ripples out. May not seem like on the surface, but it definitely does. So anyways, man, we'll probably end with that. It's a pretty good episode. You want to end with anything? You want to do another call out to your services that you have and where people can find you and all that? We'll link it down below.
Yeah, man. So if anybody wants to, like, I offer coaching as far as like if you want to get better, learn about your nutrition, get better with like your training, like working with athletes. So I have that outlet. If you want to pursue that, that's go find Optimal Evolution. We're on Instagram, and you'll be able to connect with us there, and we can help you on that level, like performing better, lifting more weights, like eating better. Really, kind of if you've made it this far, then you hopefully kind of had a grasp of the the different things we were talking about, and the different levels, like
more of kind of the base levels of things, the foundation of things. If you want to get into some of the deeper stuff, I do more of like lifestyle and business coaching, and really just, you know, spirituality coaching, like really helping you learn how to play this game, at least to my own best understanding of it currently. Then just honestly, the best way is just to reach out to me on Instagram. I do live trainings every Thursday that ultimately kind of prelude my deeper training. So that's kind of like my prerequisite. But yeah, just find me on Instagram. And if you have any questions or anything, like DM me, and that's the best way to reach me right now. And I will lead with, I just plug this in everywhere. The journey is the way.
It definitely is. All right, man. We'll catch you later, and I'll let you know when the episode's ready.
All right. I appreciate it, man. It's a pleasure.
All right, man. Peace out.
Peace out.